Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's the debut of Mets Daily. We will be the #1 daily Mets YouTube show. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio on social media. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Comment below. Let us know what you think about the show, what you think about the Mets, what you want to see. We will be here daily on YouTube at Jake Brown Radio and all socials. You've heard me on the Amazing But True podcast with the New York Post with Nelson Figueroa. You hear me on the Mets Magic podcast with Sick Media. I've been covering the Mets a while. I'm a diehard Mets fan. I go to a lot of games. I know some things behind the scenes, and I'll give you my perspective as a fan and someone who's been around for a long time about the New York Mets every day on YouTube. So appreciate you subscribing, sharing with any of your Mets fan friends, having them be a part of the program. We will be here every day reacting to anything in Mets land. All the news, the latest hot stove stuff. If there's a signing, we'll be on here breaking it down. If there's a trade, someone got cut, we'll be here taking you through it all. We're with Fan Arch. Thanks for Fan Arch for having me aboard, and let's get this thing cooking. Enough pleasantries. Happy New Year. Hope you all had a great holiday season. Let's talk Mets baseball. And the talk of the hot stove, the talk in Mets land continues to be Pete Alonso, to the point where, frankly, I'm sick of hearing his name. I mean, it's getting out of control, and it's a story every day because he's really like the last man standing. Every first baseman in free agency just kept flying off the board. Christian Walker went to the Astros. Carlos Santana went to Cleveland. Paul Goldschmidt went to the Yankees. Josh Bell went to the Nationals. Names flew off the board, and the last man in terms of that A tier that is standing at first base is Pete Alonso. And Pete Alonso is out here looking for a big deal. His agent is Scott Boras. You knew he was going to want a big contract. But unfortunately for him, he didn't have a good year. He had career lows in homers and RBIs. So the latest quote to come out of all this Pete drama comes from Bob Nightingale of USA Today, where he says Scott Boras is reportedly using Prince Fielder's 9-year, $214 million contract as a comparison to what Pete Alonso should get in free agency. Are we out of our minds? How are you going to compare this contract that Pete's going to get to that contract, one? Two, that contract ended up being terrible because Prince retired halfway through. Three, he might age like Prince, a big guy, not as big as Prince, but the second half of that contract, he might wear down and might not be the same player. So to me, this is absolutely ludicrous if Scott Boras is living in a reality where he thinks that's happening. He's living in La La Land. Great movie, not a great reality for Scott Boras and Pete Alonso. And that's a problem. That is a major problem if he thinks that's going to come to fruition. It really is. I just can't see it. And look at Pete Alonso's last season. Career low in homers, 34. Career low in RBIs, 88. Career low in WAR, 2.6. Career low average base loaded, 154. Career low average run in scoring position, 232. I'm not saying the Mets shouldn't bring back Pete Alonso, but to give him anything more than 3 years would just be dumb. There's no market. You know, Nightingale also reports 8 teams are interested, but I think it's very little interest at this point. Like it's reported the Red Sox, Blue Jays, obviously the Mets, the Angels and Giants have been talked about as well. But I think they want to get him at his price. You see the numbers right there. They weren't pretty for Pete. So, I don't know. I think he's got to live in reality. I think the Mets have to live in reality. And David Stearns is playing this out perfectly. If someone's going to go out and give him a 6-year, $180 million deal, so be it. Mets will let him walk. But I think there's a lot of Met fans that have to put emotions to the side here and realize Pete Alonso might not age well. The year before, he had the lowest average, lowest OBP of his career, and obviously the stats I just showed you from last year. Yes, that homer in Milwaukee was magical. It was a euphoric moment, one of the best moments of our fandom as Mets fans, especially anyone my age, 33 younger. Huge moment. But for 6 months, Pete Alonso was the least clutch hitter on this team, and I get it. He's got a track record of success in the past, but we keep looking back to 2019 where he hit that 53 homers. That's a long time ago. He's 30 years old now. You know, he's not exactly in his prime, I'd say. And he's slow. He's not great defensively. He's a boomer bust hitter. He hits a lot of homers, but he also strikes out a lot, and he's not the best situational hitter. So, yes, while my emotions are saying polar bear, he could have all the lifetime Mets records, my emotions are also saying Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a free agent next winter. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is 26. He's light years better than Pete Alonso in his prime now. Pete is 4 years older. So we haven't seen 26 through 30. We haven't seen Pete Alonso's major league years in terms of age for Vladimir Guerrero yet. So we want to see Vladdy Jr. in a Mets uniform. He also has a half-brother in the Mets organization in their farm system already. So David Stearns is playing this perfectly. If they don't get him at the years and price that they would prefer, which seems to be a short-term high AAV deal, whether it's 3 for 90, 2 for 60. Ideally, you get him for 1 year or you get multiple years, but a team opt-out after one, which allows you to get Vladdy. But they're thinking short-term here. And in short-term, you think maybe moving Mark Vientos over. Maybe you think about signing Jurickson Profar, a guy who could play a bunch of different positions for you. Maybe you think about a trade for Yandy Diaz, who will also be a free agent next winter. I can't imagine the Rays ask for a boatload for a rental in Yandy Diaz. So, yes, the names aren't as sexy on the board after Pete Alonso, but it's time to live in reality, and if the Mets have to move on from Pete Alonso, they will. But I do, in the end, think they come to an agreement on a high AAV short-term deal. And I hope it comes soon because I'm so sick and tired of hearing his name and Mets fans begging for him to come back. Like, the time will come if they get him, and if not, David Stearns, you have to trust at this point. This team is 2 wins from the World Series in his first year as GM. You also got to trust David Stearns in the bullpen market because that's what the Mets badly need as well. We keep talking about a hitter and do they get an outfielder and who else do they get? They reportedly met with Tanner Scott. And Tanner Scott's obviously the top reliever on the market. He had a sensational 2024 season, 1.75 ERA, 1.12 whip, 84 strikeouts in 72 innings for the Marlins and Padres. He wants big money. And Stearns is not known for giving out big money deals to relief pitchers. He likes to get guys in the fringe market and guys with, high upside, not a lot of money. But the Mets need help for Edwin Diaz in that bullpen. And if they can get Tanner Scott, that would be huge. For a starting rotation right now that isn't the greatest, that's probably middle of the pack in the big leagues, to have Tanner Scott and Edwin Diaz at the back of your bullpen would be critical to the Mets' success. Because, listen, this is a bullpen league. Like, starters don't go more. Like, if a starter gets in the 7th inning, you're shocked. So the Mets need bridge guys. And even Edwin Diaz has been shaky for the Mets. Edwin Diaz has been shaky his whole Mets career outside of that 1 year in 2022. So if you could have a setup man who maybe becomes closer if Diaz struggles in Tanner Scott, a 4.5 WAR, which was the highest of any free agent reliever, you're in good hands. There's other names out there, Jeff Hoffman, David Robertson, but he's 40, Carlos Estevez. But, man, if you can get Tanner Scott, the number one reliever on the market, you're in good hands. And reports have said maybe the Mets would pay on the higher end for a reliever. And we'll see. A lot will depend on Alonso, too. Like, if they don't sign Alonso, that means they're not having a $30 million first baseman. That means they can get Tanner Scott, and maybe it means they can get Roki Sasaki, which we'll talk about as well in the coming days. But I would love Tanner Scott in a Mets uniform. That would be awesome. January 7th, 2021 was a day that lives in Mets infamy as we celebrate that day here, January 7th, 2025. 4 years ago, the Mets traded for Francisco Lindor. Man, what a trade that turned out being for the Mets. Absolutely remarkable deal. And at the time, I think we were all thinking, is this the right move? Is it right to trade Andres Jimenez, Ahmed Rosario, and then 2 prospects, Isaiah Green and Josh Wolf, for a year of Lindor and Carlos Carrasco? I think we were all thinking, why not just sign him in free agency with Steve Cohen? Well, guess what? That turned out to be one of the biggest deals in Mets history, and Francisco Lindor should be the captain. And it's why the Mets can stomach moving on potentially from Pete Alonso, because the leader of this team, the vocal leader, the face, the veteran, the one that all the players look up to is Francisco Lindor. Since 4 years ago when they got him, he's 4th among all position players in F-WAR. The numbers are remarkable. He has just been a godsend for this Mets franchise. And I remember going on Fox 5 New York that day and talking about it and how elated we were. But I think he started off a bit slow. We weren't sure. You heard the boos. And now Francisco Lindor has become a god. in Metsland. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio. This is Mets Daily. Hit that thumbs up, comment, subscribe, share. We appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow talking everything Mets right here on Mets Daily.